Virginia becomes the latest state to consider cultural competency evaluations for all teachers. These are kind of like Soviet interviews, right? Make sure you got your politics all right. Teachers either embrace the woke or go home broke. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Before we start, I want to take a quick moment to encourage everyone to download our brand new FreedomProject media app. It's like a kind of mini vaccine against Facebook and Twitter. We have our own app, which means we can send you directly, face-to-face from us to you, our programming. You get access to hundreds of hours of content and 17 new shows a week. Simply search Freedom Project Media on your smart device and download it for free. Just make sure you allow us to notify you when we have a new program, and that's going to be a lot of notifications because we're cranking it. Okay, our first story takes us to Virginia. Used to be the land of lovers. Virginia is for lovers. Now it's for illegal immigrants and all sorts of other goofy things because we're about to undergo cultural competency training on all of our teachers. We saw this last week in other places in Illinois. I think is the first one who thought about this. And it's really a shocking thing because what you're telling teachers, your job as a teacher is not to teach. Your job as a teacher is not to take a subject that you studied in college and to teach that subject to your kids so they can get good grades, go to college, have a great life. No. We said this way back in the Common Core era, that the Common Core era was ultimately going to do away with teachers. Slowly and surely, the role of the teacher was going to be backed up. We were going to get rid of teachers. All this impact that teachers potentially have on kids is dangerous to the progressive left because all of that heart and soul that teachers could put into getting kids to love Shakespeare or algebra or geometry or World War II history, all that, it's dangerous. So here we are now in the fifth year of the post-Common Core era, where Common Core 1, it's been disseminated. It's not called Common Core anymore, but here we are. And now what they're doing is they're forcing teachers to basically make statements, confessional statements, about how their whiteness is the problem, how they're committing to training themselves not to be white. They're going to make sure they're committed to making their students realize that whiteness is a disease. This is what teachers are about now. It has nothing to do with teaching, learning, or school.
And we've talked about this in the past, and you've mentioned Illinois, but we mentioned Virginia in the past too. And now the bills that were in the state legislature have actually gone through. It's passed in the state of the House of Delegates, and there is a bill in the Senate. And so it's not just that, we need them to do this. No, they're being mandated. All the teachers must undergo this cultural competency. That's what they're calling cultural competency.
And you and I both know that Governor Blackface is going to sign it, so consider it a done deal in Virginia.
This is true. It's Governor Northam, but if you haven't been paying attention, he's Governor Blackface. Him and a couple other governors, but we won't go there.
Governor Clan Pointy Hat. That's who he is.
That he is. So the other thing is, it's not only like the math teachers and the English teachers, the history teachers are getting noted specifically, the history and social science teachers. So it's social science, not history in their mind. They have to undertake additional training because of the African-American history that needs to be taught. So they get extra special training. And having been one of the people who did the social sciences, joy, I'm glad I'm not in Virginia.
And with all due respect, they're not getting actual counseling on the history of African-Americans.
Oh, no.
That might be interesting.
That would actually be a fascinating course to take.
If you're going to throw out
Absolutely.
American history, which they've done, and then replace it with a serious look at the history of African Americans vis-a-vis the rest of the country, that might actually be somewhat interesting. But alas, that's not what you're going to get. Every year, these teachers will get updates on critical race theory lens approaches to teaching this stuff. So in other words, they'll learn more about every year. They'll get updated on how bad whitey is and how dangerous whiteness is and how whiteness must be eradicated and that everybody who is white is culpable, kind of like they carry a disease, a plague. It's all very 1930s Germany before the creation of the concentration camps.
Ja, nicht sehr gut. Now, in Virginia, according to the bills, each teacher and any other school board employee holding a license issued by the State Board of Education to complete cultural competency training in accordance with guidance issued by the board at least every 2 years.
Yep.
That'll just be every year, and then it'll be every single conference they attend.
Who is this board? I mean, this is the really
They're
creepy.
yeah.
This is the really creepy thing. You can't teach unless you agree to hate white people. You can't teach. If you don't believe that white people are a scourge and a disease, you're not welcome to teach in our school. If you don't sacrifice all the hard work it took you to become a teacher, to become nothing more than a race sociologist, we don't want you in Virginia.
And it's not just the ones who are already in the system. Now they're going to get you before you even get in. So anyone seeking a license initially, which we've talked about how many times on this show, that's what teacher education training is nowadays. But every person seeking initial licensure or renewal of a license shall complete instruction or training in cultural competency. And it directs that every person seeking the initial licensure or renewal with an endorsement in history and social sciences, again, shall complete this extra history. So now we already in educator training, if you will, didn't learn anything about how to teach social sciences. As someone who went through it, you didn't learn anything. But now they're going to make dang sure that you will learn on how to complete instruction in African American history. That's the only thing you're going to get taught how to teach.
Critical race theory.
Yes.
Again, I want to acknowledge that African American history is a thing, and quite potentially an interesting thing. I'm not sure I would replace the history of America with the history of African Americans. Still, but it'd be history. You're getting just more and more critical race theory. Tell me this is not true. Given that most African Americans have no interest in becoming public school teachers, qualified, educated African Americans can make a lot more money doing other things. They're in high demand. The reality is, though, from what you're hearing from these schools, if they could find a way to block everybody from becoming a public school teacher except a black person, they would do it. Because this is what they're doing. What they're basically saying is that this is a huge negotiation for us, right? We don't want white people. The white people are the problem. White people with degrees are the problem. But we can't. But 80% of our teachers are white people with degrees. They're the only ones willing to put up with the crappy circumstances in the American public school system. If we could get rid of that 80% of white people and replace them with even minimally qualified black people, we would do it. Because the purpose of this is to teach kids how bad whiteness is. And when you have actual white teachers, that gets in the way. There's no way a white teacher can abase him or herself enough to make the point. So if we had only black teachers, that would be the way we'd go. And you know what? I'll bet you America would roll over on that too. If tomorrow they found enough black teachers to do this and they fired all the white teachers, my response to that, the United States response would be, okay, it doesn't matter as long as my kids can get back to school and away from the computer. I think that's exactly where we'd be.
You know, since we're talking about critical race theory, let's talk about Christopher Rufo, who's been doing his due diligence and pointing out all of the critical race theory that is happening across this nation in our K-12 schools. And he's been doing a pretty darn good job of it. And his latest is highlighting what's happening in Buffalo public schools, where he goes to Twitter and puts out the scoop. And so he gets whistleblower documents from various schools, parents who send stuff into him, and then he researches it. He's like a journalist or something. And he basically points out what is happening. And so his example for this time is that Buffalo Public Schools claims all white people perpetuate systemic racism and forces kindergartners to watch a video of dead black children warning them about racist police and state-sanctioned violence.
You know, there's only one way that would work, because there is no epidemic of police officers killing little kids. Put that tweet back up there. There is no evidence of black babies and black children being killed by white people, by white supremacists, by white racists. You don't have the Klan lynching little 6- and 7-year-olds. None of that exists in this country, except the only way that would make sense if they were the bodies of black aborted babies by black aborted liberals, by black supporting places like Planned Parenthood. If you want to go and do that, if you want to show kindergartners dead black babies, then hang the noose squarely around Planned Parenthood. But this isn't that. You're making these 5-year-olds believe that kids who look just like them, 3, 4, 5-year-olds, are being murdered by police officers. It's not true. It's a lie. Every time a bullet goes through somebody's front window and kills a little kid in Chicago, happens way more than you'd think. It's always black on black violence.
So Christopher Rufo, he points out the head diversity czar, as she's called, Fatima Morell, who he says is the architect of the district's pedagogical revolution. because it's a revolution, summarizes the dense phrases in one single word: woke. So she apparently talks about all the anti-racism and the anti-racist idea and all that stuff. And then they have the curriculum that got put out. So a veteran teacher said that Morell's curriculum consists of scoldings, guilt trips, and demands to demean oneself simply to make another feel empowered. So as an example here, last year, in her role as director of the Office of Culturally and Linguistically Responsive Initiatives, Morell created a new curriculum promoting Black Lives Matter in the classroom and an anti-racist training program for teachers. And then this is where the scoldings part come in, and the guilt trips and the demands and all that. Teachers must submit to these manipulative mind games and express support for Morell's left-wing politics or risk professional retaliation. We haven't heard that anywhere for any schools before, have we, Dr. Duke?
No. And when you hear the word anti-racism, what you're doing is you're taking people who aren't racist and forcing them to become anti-racist by dunking on their own race, by exposing themselves as guilty creatures. This is racism, my friends. It's racism by every definition. You're asking people who themselves are not racist, you're making them admit that they are racist in a very Soviet way. We're going to punish you. It's like the Soviet Union. They would get these people who fought against the Soviet regime. They would, before they executed them, and you knew they were going to execute them, Stalin made them go through this elaborate public confessional situation where they were asked questions, they revoked everything they said before, they embraced the new leadership, they had no longer had a problem with the Soviet Union, and right before they got the bullet in the back of the head, they talked about how loyal they were to Joseph Stalin. What you see happening here is very parallel. You're going to have to admit your white people are the problem, and then you're going to have to admit you're part of the problem, and then you're going to have to admit that no matter what you do, you can't stop being part of the problem, and then you're going to have to admit that whiteness itself, which is who you are, has to be destroyed. That's what they're doing.
So they're starting this in the kindergarten, and this kindergarten curriculum includes the individual lessons, which I've obtained, this is Christopher Rufo speaking on Twitter, are even more divisive. In kindergarten, teachers require students to watch a video that dramatizes dead Black children, warning them about the dangers of being killed by racist police and state-sanctioned violence. You can see the actual examples from the curriculum, the lesson plans that are being shown to these 5 and 6-year-olds.
Question.
It's not like he just made it up. This is the actual evidence of it. Answer.
Question. Trayvon Martin was killed by a white Hispanic.
Don't even. Yes.
Do we need to get white Hispanics to claim their racism too?
Yeah.
It's a white Hispanic thing, I guess, isn't it?
I don't know. But by 5th grade, don't you worry, because that's just the kindergartners. By 5th grade, students are taught that America has created a school-to-grave pipeline. Remember when it was school-to-prison pipeline? Which I was taught in my education courses, of course. But this is school-to-grave pipeline for Black children, and that as adults, 1 million Black people are locked in cages. Wow, we are conflating a lot of things right there.
Yeah, the word criminal now doesn't exist. Woo. Notice this. Notice what they've done. Because of white supremacy and racism, criminals, white people are criminals. White people have what they got because they stole it from everything else. But you cannot use the word criminal with respect to George Floyd, who died of a fentanyl overdose. Can't say that. And so every African American in jail is in there because of white supremacy. They did nothing wrong.
And then very quickly, because we can't leave out our middle school and high school kids, the middle schoolers are told that all white people play a part in perpetuating systemic racism, and white elites work to perpetuate racism through politics, law, education, and the media. Whites derive their wealth from slavery and are unfairly rich. So there's that progression of getting the thought into the kids' minds. So by the time they reach high school, they know that students must begin confronting whiteness in their classrooms. White teachers asking white students to atone for their white privilege.
And white kids are unfairly rich, but white kids also make up the highest demographic of so-called poor people in the country. But logic is white supremacy too, so just forget I said that.
Yeah, so now we know all that, we can't talk about it because we need to talk instead. Our high school kids need to use their voices for the cause of left-wing anti-racism. They must become activists. So, we had some big news happen where basically we had a chancellor step away, a superintendent. Chancellor Richard Carranza, who we've talked about umpteen times, I'll say, on this show. He was, I guess now, the New York City Schools chancellor, and he has decided to step away. And when you read the initial headline, NYC Schools Chancellor Richard Carranza resigns after enduring heavy pandemic losses. First you say, yay, he's finally leaving, and then you begin to question what that headline could actually mean, because it could have many different meanings.
Well, Carranza is, of course, as big a left-wing ideologue as you had. Apparently, he lost a lot of family during this pandemic. I wonder how many, by the way, in New York City, how many of his relatives, his old relatives, were jammed into nursing homes by Governor Cuomo. But I guess that's a question we better not ask, okay? Many of his relatives died from COVID. We extend our sympathies, but over his 3-4 year reign of terror as the chancellor of New York public schools, not one African American kid took one more step closer to literacy. Not one kid got better, because the whole thing was merely politicized. If you want to go ahead and show the video.
For 3 years, he's given his heart and soul to the kids of this city, and it's been a labor of love.
Make no mistake, I am a New Yorker. Well, not by birth, by choice. A New Yorker who has lost a New Yorker who has lost 11 family and close childhood friends to this pandemic. And a New Yorker who, quite frankly, needs to take time to grieve.
You know what, Mayor de Blasio? It's utterly unnecessary for Richard Carranza to have given his heart and soul. If instead these educators and these educrats gave 1 ounce of their brain to actually fixing the problem of New York schools, which has nothing to do with race, it has nothing to do with gender, it has nothing to do with critical race theory or whiteness, it has everything to do with the head, not the heart, not the soul. It's all about teaching subjects to kids who show up for class, who are disciplined enough to sit on their butts and listen and learn, kids who are willing to let themselves be governed so that they can begin to learn things. It's a head thing, de Blasio. It has nothing to do with heart and soul. But then again, I'm talking to a godless communist, so what's the point?
Now, what's fascinating about this whole story is the fact that Carranza was in his role for almost 3 years of the nation's largest school district. And his announcement actually came the day after the district finally opened the doors for 62,000 middle school students. Now, we've been talking on this show about why aren't our kids back in school. And New York City, being the nation's largest school district, has been twiddling their thumbs this entire time, and then the announcement comes. Now, what's going to happen from here is there's going to be a new person who's coming in. Her name is Misha Porter. She is a lifelong educator and currently the Bronx executive superintendent. And she already said her priority is to open the New York City high schools, which is a good thing. Let's listen to what she had to say.
This moment isn't about me, it's about the story of us and what we're going to do together to move this system forward. I grew up in South Jamaica, Queens. My mom is a teacher, and what I learned first from my favorite teacher, my mommy, is the importance that one teacher makes in the life of every young person.
If I were the cynical bastard that I am, and I am a cynical bastard, I would wonder if some of this retirement stuff from Carranza, I really believe that he thought he was going to be the Secretary of Education. I mean, it would have made a lot of sense, right? No white people, you go ahead and get a Hispanic in, but they chose the different Hispanic, didn't they? They chose the superintendent of Connecticut schools, Cardona. Maybe they got their Hispanics wrong. Maybe they shuffled their Hispanics, right? Carranza got looked over for Cardona. I don't know. But there's more going on here with regards to the stepping down of Richard Carranza. And something tells me we're going to be hearing more about that down the road.
It's time for some real education. This week, it's Dr. Seuss week. We're going to discuss the immortal words of Theodore Seuss Geisel. You know him as Dr. Seuss. Now, he was born in 1904, and Seuss was an accomplished children's author and a political cartoonist. In his life, he published more than 60 books, selling more than 600 million copies that were translated into 20 languages.
Yes, and we're doing Dr. Seuss Week because, as you will find out, we just found out at the end of last week, Dr. Seuss is facing cancel culture. There are a number of activists who are saying Dr. Seuss shouldn't be taught. We should no longer celebrate National Reading Day on Dr. Seuss's birthday, all because there are certain aspects, they say, of Dr. Seuss's stories that, while they're not racist, they kind of are racially suggestive. And for the occasion, I've created a little Dr. Seuss introduction. Are you ready? They may can him and pan him, but the tykes always know that silly old Seuss is a friend on the go. You can twist him in knots and lie about his plots, or cancel his sneeches like race-baiting beaches. But Seuss will endure, despite race pimps for sure. So if truth's what you seek, join us for Seuss all this week. And here's our Dr. Seuss quote for the day. Quote, "This is the kind of things that now they're saying we can't expose kids to because, Dr. Seuss is a racist. Can't let them hear things like this. Quote, life is too short to wake up in the morning with regrets. So love the people who treat you right, forgive the ones who don't, and believe that everything happens for a reason. If you get a chance, take it. If it changes your life, let it. Nobody said it'd be easy. They just promised it would be worth it." And look at that statement he just made. It's all about power and empowering yourself. That's why the left doesn't like it. Look, if you ever read a Dr. Seuss book, all the characters are green and purple and pink and yellow. There are no black and white characters particularly. Black and white, those kind of races, they dissolve before the unique caricature world Seuss created. So you can't really go to a Dr. Seuss text and say this white guy's lording it over this black guy's because they don't exist. But go back to that quote. This is why they hate Dr. Seuss. He says everybody has a chance to make something. Everybody has a chance to take a chance. Doesn't matter what your color is. Doesn't matter what your race is. Everybody gets a chance to make choices. Nobody said it'd be easy. We just promised it'd be worth it. And that's what the American left and these race-baiting critical race theory monsters are saying. No, that's not true, Dr. Seuss. Black people have no choices. Black people have no opportunities. There's one of these two people are telling the truth, and it's Dr. Seuss. It's not the educrats who try to get rid of people like Seuss.
All right, just a quick reminder to please download our brand new Freedom Project Media app, and you will get access to all 17 news shows every single week from Freedom Project. Simply search Freedom Project in your app store and make sure once you download to allow for notifications. Now, if you're a fan of our media, please consider a one-time tax-deductible donation to support our Patriot Club. And as a little thank you, we're going to send you our signature tumbler so you can be refreshed every single day. All you have to do to sign up is visit patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us. Now, before we go, we want to take a little moment to show some love to our Patriot Club members. And today, we're giving a shout out to Daniel from St. Matthews, South Carolina. Thank you, Daniel, for supporting us.
Palmetto State. Thank you, Danny. And that's our show for today. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay educated, y'all.